This started years ago, and for a long time, I tried to convince myself the events weren't connected. They happen in different places, with different people, at completely different moments in my life. But the more distance I put between myself and what happened, the more the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. It all began during spring break of my junior year of college. 3 of my closest friends, Kevin, Ali, and Saban, I decided to go car camping in Colorado. We'd done trips like this together since freshman year, but that semester, we were all completely broke. So, instead of a paid campground, we chose dispersed camping. I found a free site listed on a camping app, somewhere outside of Buena Vista. It was tucked far down a Forest Service road that seemed to just stretch endlessly into the trees. We arrived late in the afternoon and found a perfect clearing near what looked like an old, dried-up creek bed. There were no other campers around, no recent tire tracks, no signs that anyone had been there for a very long time. It felt isolated in the best way possible. We set up our tents in a loose cluster, about 15 feet apart from each other, just wherever the ground was flattest. We cracked open a few beers, played some cards, and finally turned in around 11. Now, I'm a very light sleeper. Even at home in my own bed, I wake up multiple times a night. When I'm camping, it's even worse. But that night, I slept heavier than I ever have in my entire life. No dreams, no waking up, just pure, uninterrupted darkness. When I finally unzipped my tent the next morning, something immediately felt wrong. All 4 of our tents had been moved. Not just disturbed, not damaged. They had been moved cleanly and deliberately into a perfect square formation. And in the very center of this square was a small, neat stack of stones. The craziest part, the stakes were still firmly in the ground. Nothing inside the tents had been touched. My sleeping bag, my phone, all my gear, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Kevin came out of his tent and just froze when he saw it. Ali and Seb followed, and the 4 of us just stood there, staring in complete silence. Ali finally broke it, saying she'd had this incredibly vivid dream about being marched through a desert while someone counted her steps out loud. Kevin said he dreamed he was marching in formation with soldiers. Seb and I remembered nothing at all, but the air felt heavy, oppressive, like something had passed right through us while we slept. We found drag marks in the dirt leading from where the tents had originally been set up, but they stopped short of the final positions, as if something had just lifted them the rest of the way. And the stones in the center, there were 4 of them, balanced perfectly on top of each other. As we were looking at them, Kevin accidentally knocked them over. The moment they hit the ground, a sound came from the distance. A low rumbling, like massive stone grinding against stone. We didn't say a word. We just packed up as fast as we could and got out of there. Years passed. The second time was in North Carolina. I was 23 and camping with my girlfriend at the time, Cadence, at a small forest campground. There were only a few sites, and most of them were empty. One had a blue sedan parked there. That night, a man named Aiden approached our campsite. He introduced himself, but then lingered for way too long. He had this intense stare, and he spoke almost exclusively to Cadence, making both of us deeply uncomfortable. Later that night, I woke up to the sound of voices near our tent. They stopped the instant I moved. The next day, I found a folded napkin tucked under my car's windshield wiper. On it was written, "You should move your tent." We confronted Aiden about it, and he claimed that strange things happened in this area all the time. Abandoned camps, missing people. He said he was leaving before dark, and strongly advised us to do the same. We packed quickly and drove out just as the sun was setting. As we were leaving, we noticed his car was still there, but one of its tires had been slashed clean through. A little further down the road, we saw them, 3 figures, standing just inside the tree line, watching us. They weren't hiding. They weren't moving. Who's watching? I called the police as soon as we got service, but we never heard anything back. The last time was in Montana. I had just gone through a really rough divorce and decided to disappear into the wilderness alone. I mean, deep. Alone. I found an unofficial site in the Helena Lewis and Clark National Forest after digging through some old online forums. The drive-in was brutal, the road barely passable. When I finally arrived, there was already a tent there. It was old, covered in mold, and clearly abandoned. Curiosity got the better of me. and I looked inside. There was a notebook filled with nothing but tally marks. They were in groups of 7, hundreds of them. That night, I woke up to whispers circling my tent, the sound of bare feet moving slowly through the dirt. Then, I felt hands tugging at my zipper, scratching at the fabric. I yelled out that I was armed. I heard them scatter multiple people, running in multiple directions. At sunrise, the old tent was gone. There was no depression in the ground, no stake holes, nothing to suggest it had ever been there. But the tally marks, they were still there, freshly carved into a nearby pine tree. 7 groups of 7, and the start of another. Nearby, a dead squirrel was hanging from a branch, tied carefully in place with a piece of twine. I left immediately. I don't camp like that anymore. And I don't believe these were separate incidents. There are too many patterns that repeat. The deep, unnatural sleep. The movement. The circles. The feeling of being watched. Whatever it wasn't hiding from us. And the worst part is this: every time I think about those tally marks, I can't stop wondering what happens when the count finally ends. Thanks for listening, and if you have stories of your own, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Be safe out there.